everybody. So today we're going to do a 20-minute really quick Northern Lights sketch. On the left you'll see the supplies that I used for this painting. The one thing I forgot to add was the notebook I'm using is a Winsor & Newton professional watercolor journal. It's 5x7 cold pressed 100% cotton paper. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to just tape some borders. This is not absolutely necessary, but I just kind of like the clean white borders that taping around the edges creates. So we'll get all four sides taped down, and then we'll proceed with our painting. For your Northern Lights, you can use any colors. I live in Alaska and we see all sorts of colors, so today I've chosen the pink and the green and a little bit of white. So the first thing we're going to do is wet our paper, and you're going to want to use clean water for this process, and you're going to want to make sure that the paper is totally wet. So you may have to tip your head to the side or tip your paper so that you can see whether it's glossy or not, but you want it to be glossy, but you do not want to have puddles that are running different places. So you want enough water to make it glossy, but not so much that it's going to be running off your paper if you tip it, or creating puddles somewhere in the middle of your paper. So then we're going to go in with our color, and you kind of want to just make just lines. Now I'm going to put a mountain range in the center of mine, and I'm going to have a lake at the bottom. So my sky lights need to reflect in a mirror image on the bottom. So that's the reason why I'm doing kind of a V shape or a sideways V shape. And so we've added quinacridone rose, and then I added a dioxazine purple to my papers, and now I'm going to go to my paper, and now I'm going to go with a green color, kind of a yellowy green, very light, and I'm going to keep trying to kind of match the angles and whatnot on my paper, or on my lake and on my sky. And then we're going to go in with the Payne's Gray, and I'm going to leave a little sliver of white because there's also white Northern Lights, and so again we're going to mirror image that down on the bottom, but I'm going to fill in the gaps in between each of the colors with this Payne's Gray. And it doesn't have to be black. If you look up at the sky, it's not like totally black. You can see darker silhouettes against the sky, and so you want it to be dark, but you don't need it to be like solid black. So we're going to paint in those colors, and again painting around the different colors that I've already laid down. And the paper is still very wet, and so the paint is going to spread a little bit and create a mix, kind of, but not totally a mix. The colors are going to stay on their own, but there's going to be that soft feathery edge along the edges of all the different colors. And then I just kind of want to add a little bit darker on the edges and kind of smooth that out a little bit, but as I said, the paper is still very wet, and so it's going to spread a little bit. And around the Northern Lights areas, it's going to be a lighter color. And here I'm going to put a little bit of clean water at the base of my colors so that it keeps that bottom edge very clean. Up here in Alaska, the Northern Lights tend to have kind of a white, crisper bottom edge, and then it just kind of, the colors come above that, and it looks like fingers coming down. So I wanted that kind of a representation of that little bit of a white edge. And right there, I'm cleaning up the whiter streak, just pulling out some of the dark color. Sometimes it bleeds in farther than I want, so it's a damp brush. And then I'm just pulling, it's a clean damp brush, and so I'm just going over those edges that I want to clean up, so that they look a little bit more crisp, so that the black isn't seeping quite so far into the color. And again, cleaning up that green edge as well. And as it dries, you can kind of watch and kind of pull the darker paint out a little bit. Okay, this layer needs to dry, and so I'm going to dry this. This is a heat tool. You can also use a hair dryer, or you can just walk away and do something else for a few minutes while your paper dries. Depending on how wet the paper is, will kind of determine how long it takes to dry. And we're going to put a center feature with some mountains. So don't worry if your wash isn't perfectly even, because we're going to cover up a lot of that center anyways. Okay, now we're going to go in with a more pure Payne's Gray, a darker mix of Payne's Gray. And I'm going to put a couple of little mountain bumps, I guess you could say. These don't have to be perfect, they don't have to have any particular shape. Just something that kind of represents a mountainous area. And keep it kind of loose. You want to keep the base, because this is going to be a lake below, you want to keep the base of these mountains fairly straight on the bottom, but the tops can kind of be as bumpy as you want and as tall as you want or as short as you want. Mine are just going to kind of look like they're fairly far in the distance here. And keeping that paint really dark. You do this by adding less water, so my paint is kind of a milky consistency, maybe just slightly thicker. It takes a fair amount of dark colors to cover the area. This is a small painting though, so not too much. But you're going to want it to be fairly thick. And then because I'm right-handed, I'm going to dry this so that I don't drag my hand through my mountains into my water. If you are left-handed or you want to flip your paper over, you don't necessarily have to dry this stage. Okay, now we're going to add some more to the foreground, and this is where you can kind of decide what you want to do. I'm going to add kind of a little island closer to the front with some little grasses, just to give a little bit of context that it is an island, or that it is a lake, and that there's vegetation around the lake. Here in Alaska, the lakes around the edges grow a lot of bushes, and there's a lot of lilies and things like that, so I kind of like having that kind of out there near the edge but still out in the water. To make the grasses, so I put in the straight line. You want to maintain that straight line at the base, and then I'm just pulling up with some semi-wet paint, still dark though, you want it to be fairly dark, some different sized grasses, and you want to pull, you don't want them all to be straight up, so pull kind of at angles and whatnot, and then different heights. Now we're going to add a foreground that looks like, somewhere you're standing. So you come to this place, it's a beautiful evening, and you're taking a picture, but you're standing on some little bit of ground, and maybe it's kind of wet up in front of you, but it still creates a little bit of a silhouette to paint in there. And this can just be whatever shape you want it. It doesn't have to go all the way across, just however you want to do it. And then we're going to add some grasses to this bank area as well, some small pieces and some larger pieces. Again, don't make them symmetrical, keep them pretty loose, and keep your paint pretty dark, but also it needs to be thin enough that it doesn't skip too much across the paper, that it flows fairly easily across the paper. And they can be curvy, they can be straight, whatever, and different heights works best. It looks better, it looks more organic if you add different heights. And and different angles and whatnot. Now we've got to Bob Ross this a little bit and add a big tree. You don't have to add a big tree if you don't want to, but I'm going to put a little spruce tree. We have a lot of spruce trees up here in Alaska as well, and I like the look of them, and kind of gives you a little bit of an outdoorsy, foresty feel. And to create these, we've got that straight line up the center, and then small dash marks, some of them thin, some of them thicker, kind of a combination, and they kind of swoop a little bit. You just kind of create a fuzzy edge, and then the center, you want to leave some gaps, but also there's going to be a fair amount of space that's just filled in, because it is a silhouette, and there's other, the pine boughs are 360 degrees around the tree, so you're not going to be able to see totally through it, but there are little gaps, so don't forget to leave little gaps. Again, just that dash motion as you go along. And, because every tree needs a friend, we'll put another tree on the side as well, a little bit taller. You don't want to make them all the same size. And it's good if it kind of overlaps the background, because that adds a little bit of interest and a little bit of depth as well to the painting. And here in Alaska we have a lot of crooked trees too, so we'll put one more in there just because I like trees and they're kind of fun to paint. This one's hanging out over the edge of the lake there, as they sometimes do. And again, just that dash, short, quick strokes, dash marks that are of various thicknesses. And then you want those edges to be fairly crisp where they hang out over the lake, so that they really create that silhouette effect. Okay, now we're going to add a little bit of water to our mountains. So we've painted the mountains in, and now we need to add a little bit of interest, or a little bit of a lighter side. We've got a darker side. So we're taking clean water and dabbing it on the paper wherever we think. I'm using the Northern Lights kind of as my light spot, because they are kind of down the middle, and so the light is hitting each side of those mountains, kind of creating shadow side kind of towards the edges, and the highlighted side towards the middle. And this kind of just creates a little bit of dimension. The silhouette creates dimension. You can tell that it's mountains, but that just kind of adds a little bit of extra visual interest to the picture. And then along the bottom, we're going to create a straight line near the water's edge. Oftentimes there is a beach or rocks or something near the edge, and so that adds a little bit of dimension and interest as well. And then just a few highlights on the front. And it doesn't make them white, it just makes them lighter than obviously the silhouette, the dark around them, and it just adds character and dimension to the picture. In the trees there. The ones in the trees end up looking like more mountainous highlights, but that's all right. Okay, now we're going to use a flat brush with clean water, and we're just going to pull out some paint, and this will create the look of water, the look of movement in the water, and so it'll make it look like water, whereas maybe it was a little bit flat before, but there's a little bit of maybe some waves or something out there, or just ripples. So pull those out, and pull them out kind of everywhere along, like even in the colored areas where the northern lights are reflecting on the water, even though it doesn't look like it's making much of a difference. When you look at the original picture, it actually does. There's quite a bit of paint that pulls out of those areas, and it gives it some good ripply effect. Now we're going to add in a little bit of a reflection. This I probably could have gone a little bit darker on, but just using the Payne's Gray, but a very light, watery mix. And I'm not going all the way up to the edge of the mountain. I'm leaving a thin line and then painting in just that reflection. On the right hand side, it's a lot harder to see. The water was darker to begin with there, but on the left hand side, again in the original picture, you can see that reflection a little bit better on the screen. It's a little bit harder to see. Alright, the last thing we're going to do, I'm going to use a gel pen for this. You could also use a white gouache or a white acrylic, and we're going to just dot in some stars into the sky above. I'm not going to do this into the water, but just in the sky and all over the sky. When the northern lights are out up here, you can see the stars through the edges of the northern lights, so you want to put it everywhere. And then where it's darkest, obviously the stars will almost glow against that dark background. And when you do this, you want to be really careful not to push too hard, because if you push on a gel pen any way too hard, it'll leave a black center with a white highlight around it. That's not really what we're looking for, but dot them all over, keep them as random as you can. And that's it. So that's our 20-minute Northern Lights painting on a lake. Oftentimes the northern lights here come in the winter, so you wouldn't necessarily get the same reflection, but we do see them in the fall and in the spring as well when the lakes are thawed out. So I hope you enjoyed this painting, and if you did, I would love it if you'd subscribe to my channel, and I hope you paint this, and if you do, I would love to see your finished product. Don't forget to sign your picture. Thank you.